My name is Tara Olds. I'm the director of CAV here at MnDOT, and looking forward to do a little presentation here, share a little bit about what we've been up to, and just have an opportunity to converse. So I'll note, Thomas and I do like to keep things informal if that works for folks. So if you have questions, feel free to raise your hand. We might not see it depending on how things are, so feel free to just interject and stuff as well. Like to have that opportunity if that works for folks. All right, so since you already gave us our introduction, Sean, I'll just give a little
Yeah.
tee up of what we're going to try to cover today, but obviously allow some time at the end here for answering some questions as well. So we're going to give a little overview of CAV. I think this sometimes seems a little bit repetitive or not new to some folks, but it's always one thing we like to do just to kind of level set some of the ways that we talk about it, what we're talking about, and just if anyone has any questions on that. And then talk about why CAV. I think we all have different reasons why we're interested in technology and connected automated vehicles and wanted to give a little groundwork of why the state is interested and what we're looking in that. And then share a little bit about some of the work that we've done in this space historically over the last couple of years as well as currently, and then talk a little bit about how we're talking about AV policy now and what that means for our state looking forward. So I'm going to hand it over to Thomas as he's going to give a quick overview of CAV, and then we'll kind of tag team the presentation from here.
All right. Thanks, Tara, and good afternoon, everyone. I just want to give a brief kind of CAV 101 introduction to some connected automated vehicle technology, so we're kind of all on the same page as we talk about the rest of our topics here. So we've mentioned CAV. There's connected and automated vehicle technology in there, so kind of break those down a little bit and talk about how they work together. So first, talk about connected vehicles. So when you think of connected, think of communication. How can vehicles communicate with other vehicles, communicate with other roadway users like bicyclists or pedestrians, or potentially communicate to infrastructure? So how is that? There's technology out there that could allow vehicles to communicate with other pieces of infrastructure or parts of our transportation system. And there are automated vehicles. So automated vehicles use technology to perform those basic driving functions, steering, accelerating, braking. Use a variety of technology you can see here to perform those functions, whether it be cameras, LiDAR, radar, GPS, other technology that could potentially be used on vehicles to perform those driving functions. And there are different levels of automated vehicles. So won't get into too much of the weeds here, but there's lower levels of automation at 0, 1, and 2 that are defined more of the driver assist features. So level 0 would be no automation. Level 1, level 2, those are very common in pretty much any new vehicle you would purchase today or the last few years would have some of these technologies like lane keeping assist, adaptive cruise control, automatic emergency braking. So those would be some more of that driver assist function where the driver needs to be in control at all times, but there are some technologies assisting the driver. Then you get to those higher levels, level 3, 4, and 5. That's where it gets more into the automated area where level 3, that's where the driver is still need to be able to take over at any time, but the vehicle would be taking over more of those driving functions. And when you get to level 4, level 5, that would be where the human would not need to be the one driving necessarily. So we won't go into the weeds there, but these are not commercially available today on the level 4 and level 5. We'll get to some examples of what that might look like as well. So when you put that together, some vehicles have automated technology, some vehicles just have connected technology, some vehicles have both. So we look at these kind of together and separately at the same time of connected and automated vehicles. And a little bit of the industry overview. So some of these organizations, companies you may have heard of, others maybe not so much, but there's a lot of automated vehicle interests. See a lot in the news and other topics of the advancement of automated vehicles. So some of the big players that you might see on here are some of the large vehicle manufacturers like Ford or GM are looking to create their own automated vehicles. As I mentioned, pretty much any new vehicle you purchase today will have some level of automation in those lower levels. There are some specific automated vehicle companies like Waymo or Zoox for fall in the robo-taxi type of operation. There's also work on the trucking side of things. So companies like Torque or Gatik or Aurora are companies that are looking more on the trucking side of things. And then there's others that are more partners or part of the industry as well, like Uber or Lyft oftentimes will partner with automated vehicle operators. So there's a lot of different players in the field of automated vehicles. And on the road today, so wanted to give a few examples of some of the types of vehicles that you might see on the roadway today, whether in Minnesota or outside of Minnesota. So on the upper left there, you see a Waymo vehicle. So maybe some of you heard in the news that Waymo vehicles have arrived in Minnesota to start some mapping and some of their initial testing, anticipating potentially having full operations sometime in the future. So these are more of the robo-taxi type of vehicles. They're deployed throughout the country, different states and cities like Arizona, Texas, California, Georgia, other areas they're continuing to expand to. In the upper right is a Zoox vehicle. So this is another kind of robo-taxi type of vehicle, but this is different where it's kind of purpose-built. So it's built exclusively to be an automated vehicle. There's no steering wheel, no brake, no accelerator, some of those functions. So this is an Amazon-backed company that's starting to have some deployments, mostly in, I think, Nevada is where they've been their main deployment thus far. We're looking to expand as well. In the bottom left is an Aurora truck. So this is a automated semi-truck here that is deployed in Texas, and they're also looking to expand in other southern states as well. And the bottom right is a picture of our Go Marty vehicles. This is a vehicle from May Mobility that has operations in Grand Rapids, Minnesota. So this has been in operations here in our state since 2022, and we'll talk a little bit more about this project later on in our presentation. So some different examples of types of automated vehicles that you might see on the roadway today. But we also want to give you an idea that when we talk about CAV, it is much more than automated vehicles. So when you first, that's kind of the headline grabbing thing is you hear about automated vehicles and self-driving cars. But we want to show that there is a wide variety of ways that transportation technology and CAV technology can be used on our transportation system. So this is a graphic we like to use, call it our kind of our busy town graphic, a lot of different options and things that you might notice on the page here. Won't go into all the different examples. If you have any questions, happy to dive into, but want to highlight a few just to kind of give you a flavor of the different types of technologies that might be out there. Some of these are technologies that are available today. Some of these are technologies that are more in a testing phase. Some of these are technologies that aren't available and kind of ideas that could potentially be available in the future. So I'm just going to go through a few of these pretty quickly and then move on from there. So the first could be used for maintenance type operations. So an automated snow blower, how could it potentially help clear sidewalks or different functions around our communities? There could be, this is more on the connected side, there could be connected signage or other ways that vehicles could hear about construction zones or traffic ahead, and that could let an automated vehicle or any vehicle know where the construction zone is ahead, and they could safely navigate around that. Could be wayfinding technology, so could there be a connected signage that could help a pedestrian or someone walking around an area they're unfamiliar with and help them know where they are. There could be other connection for a pedestrian crossing. How can the infrastructure communicate with vehicles to let them know that there may be a pedestrian looking to cross an area? This is one that is currently active in Minnesota on the University of Minnesota campus and also Winona State, called personal delivery devices. These are little robots, look like little coolers on wheels that deliver goods or food to people. They can order it online and it would be delivered to folks. So this is one that is available and active here in Minnesota. Similar, this is kind of like a Go Marty type vehicle we'll get into, but there could be a ride share type vehicle that could pick up riders, and it could be an accessible transportation option for folks as well. A couple more here. So mobility hub, this could be a way for folks to trip chain or know kind of where different transportation options are, and be using connected technology to understand that. similar to the snowplow, it could be a sidewalk sweeper, things like that that could help keep our sidewalks clean in an automated fashion. And then we'll get into these a little bit as well. We've had some demonstration projects of multi-passenger shuttles here in Minnesota. So this could be an example of an automated vehicle that is a little bit larger than those robo-taxis, but could be a shuttle type of vehicle that could help people get around the neighborhood, maybe that first last mile connection with existing transit. So like I mentioned, we have a lot of different technologies out there that people are looking at, testing, looking to deploy. So it's a wide variety of things that we look at MnDOT with connected to automated vehicles. All right, with that, I'm going to pass it back over to Tara.
Thanks, Thomas. So I'm going to talk a little bit about why are we talking about connected automated vehicle technology and how is it important to the work we're doing in Minnesota. So first and foremost, I think the number one thing we often think about when we think of what the work of the DOT is to really enhance safety. So we know that that's, priority for the DOT, but also a number of folks in the transportation industry, as well as other transportation partners. So just opportunities that we really think the technology can benefit is that increased safety component. We also have those other ones of mobility and greater access to transportation options. And then the last one is providing more economic and workforce development opportunities and providing the economic growth. So we think there's a lot of opportunities for this and just kind of a little bit more relevance of that safety aspect. So last year in Minnesota, we had 476 deaths on our roadway. And I think we all recognize that one death on our road is far too many. And so, an opportunity to make things safer. We know that 90% of crashes that occur have human factors as a component. That doesn't mean that's the contributing main component, but a component of it. So, when you take some statistics in there and start to understand how you can use technology to minimize human error, there's a great opportunity to enhance safety in that space. We also know that safety is already making improvements on our roadways when you look at new technologies that are being deployed. Like Thomas went through the different levels of automation, things like lane keeping assist is already on vehicles and automatic emergency braking. So you're starting to see some of these lower levels of automation technologies be ingrained in the new vehicles that are out today and available for purchase. Additionally, when you look at the technology on connected automated vehicles, in particular, I'll say automated vehicles, there's a number of layers of redundancies and safety features. So Thomas also went through kind of the different technologies on different vehicles, whether they are automated or connected. On an automated vehicle, you might have things like LiDAR that can see through things in certain environments, and then radar that might be able to see better through snow or other types of environments. So you complement those technologies together, you have better success, more redundancies, and quite frankly, you can potentially be able to gather more about the built environment as well as the environmental conditions than the human eye has the ability to do. So great opportunity to really make strides in safety. And then in the testing that we've been doing within the state as well as other folks, they really focus on enhancing safety and making that a priority, learning how they can make things safer in the long run is always an end goal. So it's been a real great opportunity that we'll be able to share a little bit more about some of our work that we've done to try to enhance safety in this space. So going on to the next one of equity, access, and mobility. I think we all know that transportation is not fully meeting the needs, or I should say our transportation system is not fully meeting the needs of all people in our communities. And so we can do a better job potentially by utilizing new technologies in that space. So we want to also make sure that as technology does come to Minnesota, that it's not just meeting the needs for some, but really meeting the needs for all, and quite frankly, meeting the needs for people that maybe have the most opportunity to gain or where our system is not currently meeting their needs. So we're really looking to maximize the social, economic, and environmental benefits in this space with regards to technology. And we also know that technology is going to affect all modes of transportation. So not just if you own a personal vehicle, maybe you do rideshare, maybe you take transit, you walk, you roll, you bike. AV has the potential to impact all modes of transit in different ways. And so we think coordinating that and making sure that those benefits are realized are going to be very important as well. So it's not just someone in a vehicle, but all of the people on roadways can benefit. And then additionally, the ability to potentially move mobility and goods and services. We know that there's a lot of challenges with supply chain and other things to date. And so utilizing technology to help continue to advance that, enhance that, will just allow maximizing that ability for people to get the things that they want and get to where they want in that space. Jumping to the next one. Economic and workforce development. This one does not come without some trade-offs. There's definitely, we know, I think some impacts that will happen across the job sectors, both positive and those potentially considered less positive. But ultimately, we see as technology comes to our state that there's opportunity to continue to drive economic growth for our state. And with that, like I mentioned, there's going to be new jobs, higher paying jobs, higher skilled jobs, but also potential changes to the existing jobs where we might need to look at how can we reskill, upskill, and make sure that those that are currently in those jobs have existing livelihoods to continue making a living in their current work as well. So not going to try to sugarcoat that and recognize that there are potential impacts, both positive as well as one might call negative, but just maximizing the positive change is really where we're trying to move in this direction as well. Also see economic investment coming to the state with this as we look at companies that are currently testing in other communities. One of the things that they do say is that without clear regulation, there's a lack of interest to come to a state because of the potential change and shift in a political environment that could make it hard for those economic investments to be something that could be fruitful in the long term. And so just hearing that people are interested in coming where it is welcome is something that's really exciting. We know that Minnesota's led in technology development. We're a Fortune 500 company hub. We have medical device hubs and things like that. So technology is not new to us, as well as the economic growth. And so we're excited to continue that space here in the CAV space as well. And then lastly, there's a lot of businesses already involved in this, whether it's folks like 3M. We have 6 Sensors that does LiDAR testing and LiDAR development here in Minnesota, and a number of other companies that dive into AV, whether it's very directly or indirectly with some of the work that they do. So great opportunity for us to continue that growth and continue to maximize opportunities. And then one last thing I'll note too, just something that I think really sets Minnesota apart in this space is we really are looking at the workforce opportunities for future workforce and what are the career opportunities in that space. And Minnesota, DOT has partnered with the University of Minnesota and some other partners to bring forth a event called CAV Camp every year, I think 3, 4 years now, where they host a number of high school students during the summer to talk about CAV related careers in the futures. We talk and bring people to different companies that are doing CAV work and do presentations and have engagement efforts with folks and youth that are interested in this space. So it's been a really great opportunity to understand the interest of those folks as well as continue to help grow the needs for our future. So I think, Thomas, now I'll hand it back to you and you can tell a little bit about some of the work we've been doing in our state over the last couple of years.
Yeah, thanks, Tara. So CAV is not new to Minnesota. We've been working on transportation technology for a long time, but wanted to highlight some of the history and things we've been working on and some of our current projects that are going on as well. So back in 2018, Governor Dayton issued an executive order establishing a governor's advisory council on connected automated vehicles. And this really helped jumpstart some of the focus of particularly on connected automated vehicles in our state. This executive order was reestablished by Governor Walz in 2019. So we've had a few iterations of our governor's advisory council on CAV that has looked at how do we help prepare our state for connected automated vehicle technology, and we'll get into a little bit more of the work that we've been doing lately in our next section here. So our MnDOT CAV team has led a number of CAV projects over the years. I'm not going to go into all these in detail, but want to give you kind of a high-level overview of some of the variety of projects that we've done and some of the things we look at. So first, the GoMari self-driving shuttle project. We'll talk about that in more detail shortly here. We also look at how we can use some of this technology to help with our existing MnDOT operations. So things like automated truck mounted attenuator project. So this would be how can we help potentially remove a MnDOT employee from a dangerous position of being in that kind of attenuator, that crash, that has a kind of a crash barrier in work zones. That's a dangerous position for a MnDOT worker to be behind the wheel on. How can we potentially automate that and remove that driver? Also looking at snowplow lane boundary guidance. So how can we help our snowplow operators more safely clear our roadways, being allowed to have lane boundary guidance, especially in those whiteout conditions for folks. We look a lot also on how can we make sure this technology is really helping to solve existing needs in our communities across our state. So we had a project called Community Driven CAV that looked at how can we first understand the community challenges with transportation and seeing how technology can potentially help solve those challenges. This is something that in 2026 we'll be launching a Community Driven CAV program to help expand that pilot throughout the state. So we're trying to work with our communities across the state to help them go through a process to understand how transportation technology could helpfully improve transportation in their communities.
Hey
We've done some.
Thomas, we're getting a
Yeah,
lot of feedback, like static on your sound. I don't know if that's your microphone at all, or are others hearing that? I think Carl did too, so I just wanted to check. Maybe it's better now.
yeah. Is this better now? Is it also happening the whole time or just recently?
Just when you
Yeah,
talk.
just like recently when you went to this slide, it seemed like it kind of started.
Interesting. Okay, well, let me know if it continues. I didn't change anything, so hopefully, maybe it's just a blip in the Wi-Fi here, and I can try maybe sharing my video or something to, um,
Why don't you stop sharing your video and see if that helps? Yeah.
yeah, to help with that. But yeah, let me know. Um, yeah, so number of projects that we've been working on here of trying to help use technology to advance our transportation system, both MnDOT operations and broadly as well. So want to highlight a few of our projects that we've been doing. So we've done a number of demonstration projects, three
Thomas,
demonstration.
I'll just note it's still going. Do you want me to maybe just start this one as you jump off and jump back on, see if that helps?
Yep, go for it.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks everybody for bearing with us with the troubleshooting here of technology, right? I always like to make a good joke when technology is not working, yet we're talking about relying on it for transportation. It gets a little sketchy, but I mean, that's part of what we're talking about here. So, Thomas was going to lead into some of the demonstration projects that we've worked on here in our state over the last few years. And these are three pilot projects that we've had that have seen, I'll say, differing levels of success as well as lessons learned that we've really been able to gather out of them. So the first image you see on the top left is from the Med City Mover. That was in Rochester, Minnesota from 2021 to 2022. The middle one is White Bear Lake Bear Tracks, so White Bear Lake, Minnesota. And that was 2022 to 2023. And then the last photo there on the bottom right is Go Marty vehicle that Thomas highlighted earlier. That's a pilot project in Grand Rapids, Minnesota that started in 2022 and was originally an 18-month pilot that went to 3 years and now has also gotten another 3 years of federal funding to continue and under partnership with Iron Range Resource and Rehabilitation Project. So all of those three projects are very different in the ways that they were set up. The first one, a Med City Mover, was in a downtown urban environment. The had two stops and really was, I think, our first go at understanding how the technology works. We also had a connectivity component to it where it was connected to 14 traffic signals in downtown Rochester. We had a number of multimodal transportation uses in the area with regards to people driving that lived in town, people from out of the country, as well as people that would be in wheelchairs, people that would be riding their bikes, people would be on hotel shuttles and things like that. So definitely some really interesting variety in that space. That vehicle, as well as the middle one of the White Bear Lake Shuttle, those were both purpose-built vehicles, so they're considered low-speed automated vehicles. So they operate at speeds around 12 to 15 miles per hour maximum. Where the other one on the bottom right is really more about roadway speeds. I'll note the one in White Bear Lake was a little bit more suburban, had a couple stops here and there, and really was trying to see if it could serve a transportation need. And then the bottom right one was something that really was set up by the community. They identified some challenges with their transportation in their community with the lack of Uber, lack of transit options, as well as lack of taxi services. And folks, particularly with accessibility challenges, were very limited by their options. So this project was really spearheaded by them. It had originally 70 different stops in the community and utilizes a Toyota Sienna that is a little bit different than those other ones you see. So, Thomas, I see you have your microphone now on and see if that maybe helps. And I'll see if you want to maybe take over here. And if it's still fuzzy, I can continue for us.
Sounds good. Is this better at all?
It's much better.
Okay, great. Sorry about that, folks. So yeah, Go Marty will talk a little bit about this project in more detail here. So this has been a kind of two-phase project. So I'll first cover the first phase that was a MnDOT led project that Taylor mentioned originally started as 18 months and expanded to 27 months. That went through December 2024, and I'll touch on the current phase 2.0 as well. So originally there was 5 on-demand shuttles, or these minivans that folks could request. So it was point-to-point on-demand. So folks would use an app or call into a local call center to request a ride. There's 70 pickup and drop-off locations around the city of Grand Rapids. So folks, depending on where they are, would let them know where the closest pickup point is. They'd say where they want to go, and they get dropped off at their closest drop-off point. Rides were free and continue to be free for the public at this point. There was always an automated vehicle operator behind the wheel and engaged to take over if needed. They did get up to about operating autonomously about 90% of the time. And this was a really great project, as Tara mentioned, that helped meet that community need. And it was the first large-scale launch of a public autonomous vehicle project in a rural location. So it's really great to understand how this could work in a rural community and the different potential transportation challenges that exist in that environment. So some of the stats, very successful project. Grand Rapids is a town of about 11,000 folks. So in those first little more than 2 years, there was over 18,000 riders. We had about 4.5% of those riders were wheelchair accessible riders. So that was a big piece of the community need. And it was also really working with the community to understand their challenges and adjusting to that, where originally we were thinking this would be operating, during the normal business hours, but what we really heard from folks, they need evenings and weekends as the transportation options they don't have. So that's where the hours for Go Marty focused on. So it's really meeting that customer and community need. Once people were able to experience Go Marty and ingrain that in part of their life, they use it over and over again. So 93% of our riders were repeat riders. In that first phase, about 37% of folks who completed our post-ride survey mentioned that they did not use a personal vehicle as their primary mode of transportation. So really helping to meet a transportation need for folks that aren't able to drive themselves. So Go Marty 2.0 just recently launched, and that is an expansion into some additional communities of La Crescent and Cohasset, and also Deer River and Ball Club, going into some tribal nation land in the area as well. Now it's up to 9 vehicles total. There's 6 autonomous vehicles, 1 fully electric vehicle, and 2 hybrid vehicles that are meeting some of those additional needs for folks. And ever since the launch of 2.0, has continued to grow and expand. So you can see we're up to almost 39,000 riders. We're still at about that 4.5% of wheelchair accessible riders, still seeing that very high level of repeat riders. Folks, once they ride once, they want to ride over and over again. 18% of the rides are shared rides, and gain about 4.5 out of 5 star rating at the end of any ride. So this has been a great partnership with different community members and different partners. Right now, the Department of Iron Range Resources and Rehabilitation is the lead agency for this project, and MnDOT is in a support role, working with the Plum Catalyst is the lead consultant on the project, and May Mobility is the lead technology provider as well.
And Thomas, I saw we had a question in the chat asking, is there a charge to use services to the rider?
Yeah, so for all 3 of our pilot projects, there was no charge for the rider. Something that Go Marty 2.0 is looking at. It was expanded for and funded for additional 3 years. And one of the goals of that is to understand what long-term viability of that operation might be. I would say it's probably unlikely that it'd be completely free in the future, but who knows what that might look like moving forward. So that'll be part of what that project is researching over the next 3 years, is understanding what that might, any potential charge might look like in the future. All right, so we learned a lot from those 3 deployment projects. Just going to highlight a few quick things here. So we learned a lot about the technology. As Tara mentioned, there's different types of vehicles that we are testing. What is the infrastructure's role? Is there any infrastructure needs for these different technologies, and how that might work in different conditions, such as winter weather? So we learned a lot, especially in the Go Marty project. starting at the beginning of the first winter to where they are now, significant strides have been made in the technology and be able to operate in winter conditions. That's part of the reason why we wanted to have these pilot projects in Minnesota, is a lot of these automated vehicles are tested in warm climates. They're much easier conditions than we might see in Minnesota. We experience all 4 seasons in a lot of variety of weather. So helping to advance the technology in those areas. We learned a lot about what makes a successful project. So how do we know what the right goals or purpose of the project is? Where is a good location? What the different roles and partners need to play with that? What's the appropriate length? The first couple were 12 months. The Go Marty started at 18 and continue to expand due to the success and interest and reliance that the community had on Go Marty. Understand what are safety challenges or potential benefits that we saw with automated vehicles. So how do we define safe operations, and who are those who benefit? In particular, with the Med City Mover project, we did a study with the University of Minnesota to kind of understand some of the safety implications to other roadway users with a slow-moving automated vehicle in a downtown urban environment. And then the last one is a good segue into our last topic here, is what are the potential laws, rules, regulations that should be implemented for automated vehicles moving forward. So with that, I will pass it back over to Tara to cover the work we've been doing on automated vehicle policy.
Thanks, Thomas. All right, so automated vehicle policy. Starting us off, we are one of 16 states that is considered to be silent on the legality of driverless operations in our state. You'll see there's differing levels of legality, whether it's you're allowed to test and deploy, you're allowed to fully operate, or it's maybe just limited where you're not able to do it over 10,000 pounds, or it's just commercial vehicles only. So with that, like I mentioned earlier, AV industry has really said that without clear regulations, there's a lack of interest to, I'll say, test the waters to figure out the legality of it in a state. And so we've really acknowledged that without legislation, there's a potential lack of opportunity for Minnesota to start testing some of this more broadly with some of the major players, and also help shape the way the technology can really meet the needs of our communities. So there's some states that have more minimal laws. Those may be more like Utah, Florida, Texas, Arizona, and Georgia. Texas and Arizona, I'd say, well, Texas in particular was considered more minimal up until their most recent passage of updated amendments in regard to their legislation that particularly allows them to remove bad actors, and they go through a little bit of a permit process to know who the AV operators are on their roads. And there's other folks that have more stricter laws, California being the most notable, that has a very strict phased approach, where at the end of the day, I think there's only 2 AV operators that are commercially operating. So with the extent of the more stricter laws, it creates a little bit more hurdles to get through to get to that commercial operatization component. We've also looked at some industry, some considerations we're taking of what states have done, as well as what we want are with regards to the industry's ability to take risk and who should be owning that risk, whether it's industry, state, people, and things like that, as well as some of those legal challenges and safety. So as we've looked in this last year, Thomas mentioned the Governor's Council on CAV. This has been a priority for them to be exploring what AV legislation policy framework should look like in our state. This is the little summary of the approach that we've taken. So we've engaged a number of state partners. We've surveyed them as well as interviewed them to understand what their laws include, what they don't include, how they were proposed, who proposed them, what they like, what they don't like, what maybe they can say on the record, off the record, those types of things, right? And it's really been informative to help us better understand where's the national direction going in this space versus where is there a lot of variations in the way that there's different approaches happening. We've also been able to have a lot don't do this or do this based on what DOT or DPS and other partners think are critical. And so that's been really, really helpful in that space. I'll also note then we've done analysis to then with what we've heard from all those other states, what are the themes that we're hearing? So we've not just interviewed the other states, but also, as you'll see down the line, stakeholder summary. We interviewed a number of different stakeholders in this space too, to understand what are the things that they're looking at trying to get addressed. So identified key themes that we think need to be included as we look at what the legislation should be. We've worked with the University of Minnesota to identify specific gaps as well as needs that need to be addressed in our current legislation, recognizing that state statutes are tied to one another in a number of different ways. And so making sure that there's not some things that don't go unturned that we need to start addressing as well. My favorite is really the stakeholder summary. We've met, I think, with over 60 different entities and partners. Some folks that are very, very ingrained in the AV industry, potentially representing trade industries, and those that maybe are a little bit more tangential, that just want to make sure that there's things that are addressed from their own concerns. We've met with labor unions and other folks as well, recognizing that there's a number of varying opinions and perspectives and goals that we're trying to achieve with this. I would say pretty much everybody would agree that safety is a number one priority. So that's, I think, one thing that we always try to ground ourselves in is what we're trying to achieve. We have a nice stakeholder summary, though, that was prepared that tries to give folks a better understanding of where certain stakeholders are interested in, what their priorities are, and where they may be leaning in certain areas as well. And so with that, we're going to come up with some recommendations from the council here at the end of the year. So coming up on the end of the year, we just had our final council meeting this morning. So we'll be finalizing those. And with the goal is really to try to be able to provide those to the legislature as well as the governor, so that as legislation we anticipate getting introduced next year. And I would say it's even more certain now that Waymo has made their presence known in Minnesota, that we want to make sure that we're addressing this right and really looking at how can we treat vehicles in our state appropriately. We're looking at this legislation trying to address the commercial ownership of vehicles, not personal ownership of automated vehicles, and really trying to not recreate the wheel, but treat automated vehicles like other vehicles where it makes sense, and just make sure we address the legality and owner or the operation considerations with that. So here on this screen here, we can see that we have 11 different themes that we've identified as the things that have been coming forth in other states, as well as key topics that have either been pertinent to the council or key stakeholders. And so with each of these themes, there's a recommendation that the council is moving forward in to try to help move us to that path of legalizing driverless operations in our state in a safe manner that also addresses the concerns of a number of different stakeholders. So when we talk about testing, deployment, and operations, is that allowing full-on operations? Is there a phased approach in that space? What are the requirements to achieve that? We have privacy and security. I'll just note this is kind of something we've seen at a national level of not being explicitly addressed in AV legislation, but rather being addressed through other statutes like Minnesota's Data Practices Act, kind of the anticipated approach that we would see going forth in our state as well. When we think of the role of state and local governance, I would argue we could probably add even a role of federal government governance in this as well. Because I guess I probably should have even prefaced all of this is that there's no federal regulations in this space when it comes to automated vehicles. And so it kind of puts states at a have to choose your own adventure right now and creating a patchwork approach to the national landscape. Another just caveat to that is that there is anticipated federal legislation that will likely be introduced and be included in the next reauthorization of the Surface Transportation Bill next year. So not sure what that means, not sure what that will look like, but something to kind of pay attention to. But as we looked at this within our own state, we wanted to best understand what's the state's role in regulating things, and then where's the responsibility for locals to have their own ability to regulate things like businesses, curb management, and things like that that they traditionally have the responsibilities for. Safety verification, that one gets a little bit tricky and fun, where there's a lack of standard testing with regards to how do people verify that their technology is safe. There's, like I mentioned, no federal guidance, no federal regulations. This is a great place that we anticipate NHTSA to be able to hopefully step in over the coming years. And so trying to address what does that mean from a safety standpoint for the state, liability and insurance. Currently, there's things that talk about how much insurance coverage needs to be had, who's responsible, whether it's how a driver and operator and those things are defined, which leads me into the next one of Minnesota's definition of driver is actually pretty good in that it kind of encompasses a lot of things. So people can argue that there is a legal path to driverless operations already, or there isn't, depending on their interpretation of the way that we define that. Registration and permitting, it's really trying to understand, do we want to know who's operating in our state for automated vehicles, and what would that process look like, and who would be responsible for owning it? Emergency or services interaction plan. This is one that I think is really exciting, that all parties tend to agree that this is something that's really valuable to make sure that we have the not just safe operations, but safe response for people that need to respond to vehicles in this space. So we're working to with our emergency services and first responders to understand what they would want to see included in that. I mentioned that Texas had issued an amendment to their existing statute, and one of the things that they included was the ability to remove bad actors from operating. So those that maybe weren't following traffic laws, regulations, or other things that were considered to be unsafe to the public. Texas then wanted to have that ability to pull that back and make sure that they could control if there was someone that was not operating safely. And then the last two are ones that we typically don't see addressed from a legislative component, but are really important to the discussions of the council, as well as what Minnesota, I think, is trying to address with connected automated vehicles. And that's really creating things to be more accessible from a transportation standpoint. And so there definitely are some challenges when you look at creating legislation with accessibility requirements. So we're working with a number of partners to see what's the best way to emphasize the importance of that and create different programming and incentives to continue to see that maximized in our state. And then the last one, like I mentioned, workforce development. We know that there's going to be workforce changes and workforce impacts. And so one of the recommendations we're thinking will move forward is an inclusion of a research study to understand what those impacts are to our workforce so that we can be prepared and create programming at a state level to make sure we are successful. So mentioned Council Recs will be coming soon here. We're working on finalizing those as we just got the final discussion today. And with that, our last slide just is a couple questions that we like to ask of to keep us on our toes of what does the future look like. I mentioned some of the reasons why we are in this space and we think CAV has a great opportunity, but these are some questions that we're really trying to make sure that we do answer and keep us in check of. We don't want things just to be safe for some, but safe for all. Want people to have more access. Again, not just some, but all, and those that probably have the most to gain. So with that, we'll pause here. And Sean, if there's questions or time for questions, we're happy to do that.